This segment of the Bass Kayak and Beers podcast is supported in part by Douglas Outdoors, serious rods for serious anglers. Go to douglasoutdoors.com and check out their new lineup of Era rods that retail under $100. Norsk Lithium, the lithium battery that you need is just a click away. Go to norsklithium.com and check out some of the lightest lithium batteries in the market with the best warranty in the business. Mariner Sales. Located in the heart of the DFW Metroplex, Mariner Sales has the largest inventory of kayak and kayak accessories in North Texas. You can also shop online at marinersales.com. What is going on, everyone? Hope you're having a great Thursday, February 20th. We got a live show as always. We're going to be talking to Kyle from the managing director for social media and pro staff for Norsk Lithium. And today's episode, we're going to be kind of like educational. What batteries should I use for either my trolling motor or my forward-facing sonar or my electronics if you don't use forward-facing sonar, fish finder, depth finder, side scans? What are the differences between lithium-ion batteries and LiFePO your which is the advantage? Which ones I should use for kayak fishing and which one I should use for like a trolling motor and again, your electronics. Also, we're going to be talking about safety issues. I know a lot of people are still a little bit hesitant to try lithium batteries because of the perception that they catch on fire. Technology has gone a lot further in the last few years, so it's not much of an issue, but there are some things, excuse me, there are some things that you should consider, especially when you're buying a battery. Should I go for a cheap generic brand or should I invest a little bit more on a higher quality battery? Can you use the same batteries for trolling motor and for your electronics? Does that work? Is that a good idea? So stuff like that, we're going to be talking about in this episode. If you have questions, please put it on the comments. Kyle will, do its best to answer your questions. First of all, I got Oil Field Angler finally catching my first live show in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico. So I'll see how much my signal cooperates. If not, I'll catch you on the podcast. Well, thank you so much for checking in. If you are new to the podcast, or the live show, you can follow us on social media on the Bass Kayak and Beers, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. We do have 2 episodes a week. One of them is the Advanced Kayak Angler. That is strictly on our MP3 formats, and you can listen on any of the major podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, mostly all of them. We do have 2 shows. The Advanced Kayak Angler, which airs every Wednesday with Kurt Smith. He talks to anglers, usually tournament anglers in the kayak fishing world, about how to get better, sharing tips and tricks to help you catch more fish. He's in the middle of a electronic series. So he's breaking down how to fish with forward-facing sonar, how to fish with side scan. This week was a great episode with Matthew Scott and Jordan Marshall, 2 guys who have done amazing in tournaments without even the use of any type of electronics, especially Jordan Marshall. He won Hobie BOS AOY a few years ago, and he didn't even own a fish finder, much less a forward-facing sonar. So it is possible still in our kayak fishing tournaments, locally and nationally, to actually win tournaments, win money, and win AOYs without even having to use a electronic. So go check out those episodes. Our second show of the week is always going to be the Real Life, which is the one you're listening now with your boy Armando. And we interview people, tournaments, anglers, social media content creators, or somebody like Kyle today who works for Norsk Lithium to give us more insight, not necessarily tips and tricks, but just have fun conversations. And that show is live, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, 7:30 every Thursday Central Time. And also it would be uploaded the following day on Friday on MP3 formats. And again, you can follow us on social media, Bass Kayak and Beers, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Let's see what else we got. Okay, Kyle. What's up, Kyle? How you doing? Were you gonna grab your charger? Or you already did that without me
Yep,
noticing.
I grabbed it. I realized I looked up and I had about 44% battery and said, you know what? Let's make sure just in case. I don't know how much this is going to pull video wise, and just another scenario where I'm thinking about amp draw.
So, Kyle, thank you so much. We met a few years ago on iCast, and I learned so much about electronic, not just Norsk Lithium, but batteries, what type of batteries you should use. I didn't even know there was a difference between lithium-ion and LiFePO batteries.
Yep.
And we've built a great relationship both on the business side of it and as friends. And I've always loved your insight on, every time I have questions on, how to best utilize my battery. So I thought you'd be a perfect guest to come up to the show and talk about, how to take advantage of batteries to power your kayak. So the first question that I wanted to bring in, and again, if you're watching on the live show, please put your questions on the comments. We'll get them answered. But the first question that I wanted to ask you, what is the difference? Or at least you don't have to go into the science of it, but as far as applicable use, what is the difference between an lithium ion and a LiFePO battery? Like what are the advantage and disadvantage of each one, and how can I best use it for power my kayak?
Sure. So if we're talking the difference between lithium-ion and LiFePO4, that lithium iron phosphate, normally what it would come down to is a lithium-ion. We chose to use that in a lot of our portable sonar batteries because you can fit a higher energy density into a smaller case. So then that way, if someone is in the kayak realm, every square inch matters. You don't have an unlimited amount of area. It's not a 20-foot boat that 5 different compartments could hold batteries for you. So the big thing with that lithium ion is lighter. It's smaller, so it's a little more compact, and it does a great job of offering a higher voltage. So that's how you're able to get like a higher voltage into some of the some of your electronics and stuff like that without needing to be a very large case size. On the flip side, when it comes to lithium iron phosphate, the nice thing about that is it's very, very, it has a higher longevity. So you can get usually about a double the lifespan out of cells that are LiFePO4 versus lithium ion. That being said, if you took one of our portable sonar batteries, you're still looking at 2,000 charging cycles, which is very, very significant. It's going to take an extended period of time to ever reach that point. But when it comes to LiFePO4, you're looking at about 4,000 plus charging cycles. So it does have a longer lifespan, but they are heavier and they do have a larger size for the cells, which is why mainly we use those for the marine electronics side. Because if you're in a scenario where you're lugging a battery in and out of somewhere, you want it to be light. And that lithium ion is a lighter option. But for a trolling motor, realistically, you understand if you want to go all day, it's going to be a larger battery, a marine size case. But still, I mean, you're talking a Group 27, one of our 12 volt 105s. It's about 26, 27 pounds. That equivalent for power out of a lead acid would roughly be between 70 and 80 pounds. Wow. So it's significant difference.
Yeah, especially when you're in your kayak, even if you have like the new modified XTR 130, which is like a barge, right? I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's an amazing fishing platform. But
stability matters, right?
Yeah, stability matters, and it's probably out of the kayaks that you can carry more weight on your kayak. That's probably right now the top one that we have in our kayak fishing industry. So, but it still is obviously a lot less than a boat. So, having something as compact and light as possible while, getting the maximum out of it is, what we strive for in kayak fishing, right? Yeah. For all the reasons that we just mentioned, which may not be as big of a deal on the bass boat world. One of the things that I noticed with the lithium-ion batteries, and I was talking to I'm not going to mention names, but I was talking a kayak shop, and they were selling this type of batteries, but then they dropped it. One of the reasons that they dropped it is, even though it's Texas, we really don't get that cold. Although today got in the low teens, which is not normal. I know for you, you live in Minnesota, right, Kyle?
Yeah, you know
Yeah,
what?
that's a joke for you.
This past weekend it was it was a very enjoyable, about -25. And I'm more, you know what?
Enjoyable.
When we get ice, you know what? I just drill a hole and I'll fish through the ice. I'm good with it.
Yeah, no, you can have all that ice. But anyways, there was a couple of anglers that had a few problems back in the Bassmaster Kayak series a few years ago in Lake Fork, where there was literally ice
Mhm.
on the lake because their batteries would not work. They would not start. And a lot
Yep.
of them is some of that brand that they no longer carry. And again, I'm not
Mhm.
here to drop names or point fingers, anything, or
Yeah.
you know, talk bad about any other company. But it didn't. What I heard was they didn't have that sort of like a heating element or something to prevent it, so you can use it for cold start weathers. I know it's not maybe
Yeah.
a big deal in Texas. Maybe it'll happen 1 or 2 times a year, but why is that important, especially in
Sure.
where you are in Minnesota, right?
Sure. Yeah. So here's one of the things I'll point out. A lithium battery cannot charge when it's under 32 degrees, because the battery management system, the BMS inside, will prevent the charge because it's not going to damage itself. So essentially, there's heating or I should not heating. There's temperature probes in the battery case, um, and when it recognizes it's too low, it will prevent a charge. You shouldn't have any issues discharging. That should, if that's the case, and a cold weather discharge is an issue, there's something wrong with that battery. But like for instance, if I'm using a lithium ion battery in my ice fishing unit up here while I ice fish, those are good until far into the negatives. I mean, you'd be pretty miserable and probably not be able to fish to reach that point. If it's that cold where your battery cannot function, I mean, you're in the negative Fahrenheit, and you're probably not going to want to be, fishing at that point. So, but yes, that is one of the reasons why we do offer a heated version of our marine batteries, for that fact of, if you are on, say, like the tournament trail or something like that. Up north here, we've had National Walleye Tour events that are in March, in Detroit on the Detroit River. And if you're dropping below 32, and you fish one day and day two, you realize that your battery's never charged. It's because of the fact that your battery prevented from injuring itself and ruining cells. So it didn't charge. With a heating element, what ours do is it directs current to it takes the current that would normally charge, directs it to the heating pads, warms the battery internally to a safe temperature, then goes into the charging cycle. So essentially, we found a way to, I'll call it weatherproofing your battery, so you can charge it in whatever temperature you need to.
That's really cool. It seems kind of simple, right? It's just like, okay, we'll use that same energy to heat up the battery first and then
Right.
charge it.
Right.
Seems pretty cool. Another question that I wanted to ask you, and this it's more for the audience because I've learned this from you. I think it was either the first time or the second time we talked in iCast.
Mhm.
We were talking about what batteries should I use for a forward-facing sonar, and I didn't know that there was like, and I think you told me that there's a difference between, you know, when you calculate how much amp power uses the Garmin setup for
Yeah.
facing sonar versus Lowrance. Like
Yep.
Lowrance, the draw on the amp power is a lot more than Garmin for similar unit.
Mhm.
How do you determine if you're buying a battery for either your electronics or your trolling motor?
Sure.
We usually go to the clerk and says, okay, which battery should I get, right?
Mhm.
But really, not everybody fishes the same way. Not
Right.
everybody's going to
Right.
be in the water at the same time. Like if you're not going to be spending 8 or 10 hours on a tournament or
Mhm.
even fun fishing, then why get the highest
Sure.
power a battery that you need? And therefore, same thing with the trolling motor. what should you look for when you say, hey, you know what, I'm buying this electronics? Should I go to the website? Is there information where I can find, okay, what is the amp power? And then
Yeah.
what's the math behind, okay, let me see if this battery is going to, whatever brand it is, but right,
Sure.
what if, how this battery is going to perform at that level?
Yeah. So one of the big things I would consider right off the bat is screen size. So if you're running a 9-inch screen, there's a significant difference between power draw from a 9-inch screen to say like a 12-inch screen. A larger screen is going to consume more amps per hour. A super simple way is most manufacturers, if you go on their website, look up your specific screen size, your specific model for your head unit fishing graph, you'll be able to see, they'll say what the amp draw is. And a lot of times it's a maximum amp draw, which means at what point, what's the most amount of amp draw it could have. So we'll make it really, really simple. If you take say you take a 20 amp battery and your unit draws 2 amps per hour, 20 divided by 2, that tells me I'm going to have 10 hours of runtime. So what it is you're trying to figure out, okay, how long am I going to be on the water? How big is my screen? What is my draw? And kind of just that little bit of math to find out, okay, if I want to fish a 12-hour day and I get 10 hours of runtime, I might need to go to the next size of battery. And that's kind of how I would view that. The other piece of the puzzle, that's kind of how I'd look at electronics, because electronics are always going to be, essentially, it's more of a consistent amount that it's drawing. You're not going to have big, waves of low power, high power, that sort of thing. But the trolling motor does. A trolling motor, is, say you're using a Minn Kota, it can be setting 1 or setting 10, very drastically different amp draw. What I would suggest when it comes to someone trying to pick a trolling motor battery, what do you have for a trolling motor? Is it 12 volt? Is it 24 volt? Are you fishing a river or are you fishing a lake? So if you are having to battle current on a river, the last thing you want is to go down river in the morning and run out of juice coming up river to get back to the boat launch. You know what? Paddle power is great, but not when you're trying to fight a current. So one of the things I always point out too is, so our orange lineup of batteries are 14.8 volt batteries that are the portable sonar, and then all of our marine batteries, they connect to what we call the Guardian app. So it's an app we developed, and there's Bluetooth in those batteries, so you can see what the metrics are. And one of the nice things about that is, number one, it's going to show you what your amp draw is, and it's going to give you an estimated runtime. So in that aspect, I would be looking at, okay, I've been fishing for 3 hours. I'm going to look at my Guardian app. Okay, how much battery capacity do I have left? It'll give you a percentage. What am I consuming? Can I continue to do this for the rest of the day? The other nice thing is you can set notifications. So if I were a kayak angler, I would set a notification for 50%, because if I use 50% of my battery capacity and I'm not halfway through my fishing day, I have to adjust what I'm doing, and I'll know before it's too late.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've used that app and it's pretty awesome. I actually have to make a little video on that, because I fished the Kato event for the Bassmaster Kayak Series this year, and I was kind of impressed with the usage rate of the battery. Like, I went 4 miles up current and then 4 miles down current at 2.5 going up and 2.5 coming down. I actually did. I'm not even guesstimating. I went to Google Maps, and that little pin that you do to go like every turn, I hit a pin until it told me how much. So it was 2.5 miles going up current, 2.5 miles coming down current. And I checked the app, and I had a 40% power.
Yeah.
And I was on the 180 Pro.
Okay.
I think, what was it? The 12 volt 50 amp battery. So I was like, wow, it's like 5 miles. Oh, and I was going at 100% power.
Sure.
So I was like 5 miles at 100% power.
Yep.
That I thought was impressive. So I have a comment here from Lawrence Martinez says, is that part of the deep sleep?
Okay.
Love that idea.
Sure. So deep sleep is something that we just introduced.
Yep.
So at ICAST 2024, we released a brand new lineup of batteries. Every single battery we redid, and the ones that do connect to Guardian, that Bluetooth app, we put something called Deep Sleep, which he had mentioned. What Deep Sleep is you can use the app, go into the options. There's three little dots. You click on those dots on the battery of your choice, and it'll say enable deep sleep. What that does is when you enable deep sleep, it cuts all power to the terminals. So what's nice about that is you could put your kayak in storage. You could put your fishing unit, say I'm done and I'm not going to use it for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever amount of time. You can actually cut the power to the terminal so you can know that there's no parasitic draw. One thing I always point out, if someone is using an item like say you're using LiveScope or you're using Active Target, the black box for live imaging on those two systems, it draws power whether you're using whether you're using the unit or not. It's a constant draw. So most people would put in, say, a shutoff switch. Well, if you forget to do the shutoff switch, that would be one way that you come back to your kayak and, oh no, my battery's real low, or oh no, my battery's dead. It's because there's a constant draw. Same thing with, there's a few other options there. So when it comes to trolling motors, sometimes a foot pedal can have a constant draw that you don't know about. The GPS puck, there's all these small little items that have a small draw that doesn't seem big, but if you have that small draw on constantly for an extended amount of time, it's going to draw down the battery. And deep sleep is a way to essentially cut all power to the terminals and prevent your battery from losing any power while in storage or when not in use. And it's something that is really, really beneficial, especially when it comes to storage, whether that's for the end consumer or say someone that is stocking batteries. Because if the batteries are in deep sleep, you don't have to worry about charging them while they're on the shelf. That you're still going to have good battery life, because then when you're ready to use it, you wake it up out of deep sleep, whether you use the app or the power management button on the battery. And so it's kind of that peace of mind that, up here in Minnesota, what we'll do is we'll charge our batteries full at the end of the open water season, and then we'll put them into storage. Normally a battery is going to discharge at in what's millivolts. So you'll lose the battery capacity over time. But what's nice is when you put it in deep sleep, it actually draws in microvolts, which is 1/1,000,000th of a volt. And that small amount will keep that battery life for an extended period of time. So like a 12-volt, 100-amp marine battery, if you put that in deep sleep, charge it full, put it in deep sleep, it draws so little that it could live in that state for, I think we calculated it out based on draw, for like 62 years. That's how little of a draw it would have. So it's absolutely, super, super beneficial. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that are able to save their batteries, because there's nothing worse than having that parasitic draw, and you come back to a battery, and if it's been drawn down too far, sometimes it's too late and there's no coming back.
One thing that I learned the hard way back when I have an Ascent 12T, I bought a Raymarine fish finder, and I didn't want to drill into my kayak. And there was a company in Canada. Again, I'm not going to mention names. I'm not here to diss on anybody, but they would sell like a harness for your fish finder for that. It's like a magnetic, right? That it's strong magnets and it'll hold it on your kayak. And it came with the battery. The battery stopped working like a month into it, and I had to call the company in Canada. They're like, "Did you let it run down to zero? Like, did you exhaust? You went out and zeroed out on your battery?" And I'm like, "Yeah." It's just like, "Yeah, that ruins it. You can never let it run all the way empty, or you always have to leave it charged." And I know I'm putting you on the spots, and I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this, but I just thought of this. I remember that scenario. I was being so disappointed. I'm like, man, I paid for this battery was super expensive, and for me, and it stopped working for about a month. So when I buy a lithium battery, and if there's a difference between LiFePO and lithium ion in this
Mhm.
specific scenario, let me know. But when I buy a battery, whether it's one or the other, should I run it dry? Like if I'm going out, should I make sure I never, empty out all of it, that I run it all the way to zero, or can I leave it charging? Let's say if I leave my battery charging and I forget and it's been, connected to the charger for 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Is that going to ruin the battery?
No. So here's one of the nice things. Here's one of the nice things with it is a lithium battery. You can drain it all the way down to zero with no repercussions. There's no memory. There's nothing that's going to harm it in that instance. What would harm it is if you drained it down to zero and then decided not to charge it for a few weeks. You know what I mean? It's been a few weeks, it's been a month, and you didn't charge your battery. That's a scenario where you drained it down to zero and you chose not to charge it. You would have to physically make it a point to cause that issue. That's the nice thing about lithium, though. There's no memory. You can drain it from zero, from 100 all the way down to zero, and then just charge it up again. So there's nothing wrong in that aspect, in terms of getting the full range of use out of it. Yep.
And should you leave your battery? Let's say you forget, you left it charging,
Sure.
and it's for like a week. Like that has happened to me. You're like, oh my god, I
Yeah.
left it in the garage charging. Would that ruin your battery?
No. So here's one of the things that I'll point out when it comes to using a lithium battery, and it's important to have a correct charger with it. Usually, if someone has an issue, I would say 99% of the time it's based off what the charger is. Whether it's not adequate or is a cause for issue. But usually, what I do is I try to charge my batteries full and then disconnect them. But the nice thing about a lithium battery, because you have that BMS, it's going to reach its top end and it's going to say, hey, I'm full. I'm not going to take any more. It's not going to accept current. If you have a quality charger, your charger is going to reach that top end and say, hey, this battery's full. I'm not going to give it any more current. I don't need to. It's full. So what you're kind of trying to do is you're trying to make these things, for lack of a better term, I'll call it smarter. Because if you can have the battery protect itself, we can make mistakes, plain and simple. Accidents happen. Say someone, prime example is short circuit protection. Say someone is installing batteries in their boat, or they're working on their boat, and say they drop a crescent wrench or a wrench directly onto the terminals, and that metal rod touches both terminals. Normally, that would short something out. The nice thing about it is a BMS is meant to protect it from something like that. So it'll protect it from overcharge. It'll protect it from a short circuit like that. A quality BMS is going to really help you, because accidents happen. So let's make the battery smarter and learn to protect itself.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out, because I completely forgot about that. I remember the first two batteries that I got for Norsk Lithium. One was the two for my I was gonna say for facing sonar. I don't use for facing sonar, for my fish finder, and the other one was to power the GoPros on my kayak. And I remember looking at one thing that I appreciate about buying from Norsk Lithium versus I previously to that, I owned a battery from I don't know, I bought it at Batteries Plus, right? So I had to pay, for the battery, and then I had to buy a charger for that battery. So when I got it, I remember calling you. She's like, hey, I already got a charger. The first thing you told me is not even if it's both chargers are Norsk Lithium. Should you be using it unless it's a charger dedicated for the battery? And that's one thing that I appreciate about Norsk Lithium is you guys don't nickel and dime in that aspect, where I buy the battery. Here's the battery. Hey, guess what? Another $20. You need to get the charger, and the charger has to be specific for that battery. So I got two similar batteries. Like, why do I need this charger can only charge this one, and this charger can only charge this one other? Like
Yeah,
it can work, but
sure. So yeah, the batteries that you have, you had a few different versions.
yeah,
So the green batteries you have had an 11.1 nominal voltage. The
correct,
orange battery, that 20 amp, has a 14.8 volt nominal
correct.
voltage. So what that means is the chargers that come with them are specifically meant for that charging profile. Like the orange batteries, if you charge it full, the top end is going to be 16.8 volts. The top end of the green batteries is 12.6. You do not want to put, 4 extra volts, try to put that into one of those green batteries. So not only is it trying to get a full version of the charging spectrum and getting a full charge on the batteries, but it's also a safety issue. You want to make sure that you are being considerate and making sure that what you're using for a charger is meant for that application. And that's why the third party charger thing is a difficult thing to navigate. Because some people will look at it and say, okay, well, I found this on Amazon and it says it's a lithium charger. Well, like we've already talked about, there's different chemistries to it. Is it LiFePO4 or is it lithium ion? And when you have those two options, it's kind of like unleaded and diesel. If I go to the pump, I have to pick one of the two, right? I can't have an unleaded truck and then, sometimes I choose diesel and sometimes I choose unleaded. It's going to ruin things. You're going to see damage. It's not meant. Both are fuel sources, but they're not meant to be interchanged like that. So it's very important to make sure that you're using the correct charger, for your batteries. Yeah.
One of the questions that I've seen a lot is can you use, especially on a kayak, right? Where we have, again, what we talked about, limited space, limited, weight that we can add to our kayak. Can I use the same battery for my trolling motor and also connect it to my forward-facing sonar or my electronics or vice versa?
Sure. Yeah, when it comes to a kayak, there are people that do a one battery to rule them all.
Mhm.
And it will function. That's completely fine. One thing I will say though is especially when it comes from the boating or in any industry, I personally don't like to put additional items on my power source for the trolling motor, especially if I know that there's a chance I'm going to use the entire capacity. So I want to know that from sun up to sundown, when I want to fish, I have enough power to do so. And to be honest with you, a lot of times with today's electronics, they all have a higher voltage range. So in my mind, and the way that I would set up a kayak to run the most efficiently is I would have my 12 volt, or whatever. If you have a 24 volt, you can go that route as well. But I would have my power source for my trolling motor separate from my electronics, knowing that I could run my electronics at a higher voltage that I can't do on the trolling motor. And that way I would get a longer runtime out of the electronics. And I would also get a better signal return, a more powerful signal return. And I think it makes a difference when it comes to, what picture you see on your graph. And one of the big things for me is when we're talking about using, a higher voltage. So if you have a 16 volt battery and you compare that to a 12 volt, the 16 will give you, if these both had the same amp hour capacity, the higher voltage will run everything more efficiently, and it won't work as hard. You'll actually get 20% more runtime on that 16 volt in comparison to 12. So if you're going to get a longer runtime, you're going to get a stronger signal return. That's kind of the route I would go when it comes to electronics.
That's interesting, and thank you for sharing that, because I know that's the questions that I see a lot, and I see a lot of guys and girls out there fishing that do that same thing, and it makes sense, from the standpoint of a kayak for all the reasons we just mentioned. But it's good to have insight on,
Yeah.
if you can try to avoid it. You used does Norsk Lithium still have that battery? I remember, I think I saw it on iCast. Was it last year, the year before that, where it's the two batteries in one?
Oh yes. So what you're referring to is in 2024 we came out with a 36 volt 60 amp hour battery. Those are the main terminals, 36 volts. But what we did is we put an additional set of terminals on that battery that give you a constant 28 volts. And there's one specific item that guys are going to use in the fishing realm, and that is forward-facing sonar, your black box. The black box for Garmin and for Lowrance, those black boxes can accept up to 30 volts of current. And if you can put a higher amount of voltage, it kind of goes back to the stronger signal return and getting the best possible picture sent to your graph. So if you spent the money on getting a forward-facing sonar setup, the last thing you want to do is put a cheap battery to run it. Essentially, that's like buying a Ferrari and I'm going to put the cheapest tires I can find. You're not going to get the performance out of it. Let's make the most of it. And that's why that 36 volt battery, we added the secondary terminals so you can make the most of that forward facing sonar by getting that high voltage capacity that the black boxes can accept and getting that real strong, great current return over to your Garmin or your Lowrance head unit.
There you go. That's for those out there on the kayak world that like to use one battery for both applications. It seems like a perfect marriage. Another question that I wanted to ask is in regards to buying cheap batteries or discount batteries. And the reason why I say that is so people can understand at least my thinking. When I'm out kayak fishing and I have a budget, right?
Yeah.
I don't like to pay premium for something that's not going to directly influence my catch fish ratio. For example, if I'm going to spend a little bit extra money, it's going to be, for example, on a good rod that's going to help me pin down those fish and I won't lose them so easily and stuff like that. And I can see in accessories that I feel like, why do I want to buy the best of the best if this is just more of a nuisance, a tool that I have to use, but it's not really something that you're using like a fancy reel or a great rod. However, when it comes to batteries, I could see why people say it's just a battery. All I needed is to get me from point A to point B, or to see what I need to see on my electronics. Why should I pay more for a higher end brand?
Sure.
Obviously, we've seen in the past, especially with lithium-ion, that you all see those viral YouTube videos or social media videos of a laptop catching fire or some lithium battery powered electronic catching fire. Why is it important to really do your research when buying a battery and not just go for the bargain price or bargain bin battery?
Sure. So one thing I will say is could you get a 12 volt 100 amp hour battery for $200 on Amazon?
Yep.
Yes, you can. So the question I would raise is, if they are selling it for $200, that means they're making a profit. What I want to know is, where are you sourcing your materials and what is going into that you can create it for so cheap that you can sell it for such a low price? I have to think that they're cutting corners. There's no way that, just so you know, cells are graded. So we use a grade A cell. You can get grade B. You can get lower grade cells that were once used for something else, and now we're being recycled and used for a second time. When it comes to picking a battery, I kind of want to know that it's going to work when I need it to. If you spend the money on a trolling motor, you spend the money on electronics and that sort of thing. The last thing I want is a battery I can't trust that goes out when I'm on the water and I have a blank screen and I'm paddling. I don't want that. I want to know that I'm able to run the things I need to run. And then if I do have an issue, I want to be able to call that company and I want them to be able to help me troubleshoot and correct it. So I can tell you right now, when someone calls, we answer the phone. It's very, very common. It would be rare for someone to, not hear back from us within a 24-hour period, even if we have something else going on. I remember being down at ICAST, finishing my day, going back to our Airbnb, and from 10 to 11:30 at night, I was jumping on and answering customer service emails. So it's a scenario where if you want to make the most of it, and you want to know that you have a product that someone's going to stand behind, really look into if something is inexpensive. I don't think you're going to get the longevity out of it. I think that there's got to be corners that are cut. When I, for instance, I know what's on the inside of our batteries, and we are confident in that, to where when we go to ICAST, we have a clear case battery, so we have nothing to hide. If you want to see the internals, you can see them. And for that exact reason, it's a scenario where we know that the engineering and the structure of our batteries, an internal case design, a fully potted battery and thermoconductive resin, the way that we had set up 2 thermal conductive plates on either side of our cells to essentially sandwich our cells in and get complete connectivity. There's no inexpensive, cheap spot welds on the inside of our batteries. There are ways to cut corners, and you will find out, especially when you're using a trolling motor. When you use it, it's going to warm up. When you're not using it, it's going to cool down. The warming and cooling cycle of an inferior product, those spot welds are going to fail. And you're going to have a battery that, number one, if it does continue to work, it's going to be compromised, and say a 100 amp hour battery now only gets 80 amp hours of power, or, and slowly degrades, or it doesn't function at all. So, really looking into the engineering side of it. What are people's, what does companies say that you'll get longevity wise? Like our when it comes to our marine batteries, it has a 4,000 plus charging cycle lifespan. That is 200 charges a year for the next 2 decades. And
wow.
I mean, we're talking, as funny as it sounds, we're talking about a battery that is so well built that you could pass it down to your kids. I mean, we put time into this thing. So
what's the warranty? I forgot, but I know it's kind of
Sure.
impressive for your batteries.
So when it comes to the portable sonar, it's a 4-year non-prorated. And if you sign up for the Guardian app, we give you an additional 2 years. So it's 6 years total on a portable sonar. If we're talking marine, 10 years. If you sign up for Guardian, we give you another 2. That's a 12-year non-prorated warranty.
And the Guardian app you don't have to pay anything for it. It's not
the Guardian app,
a membership or something like that.
No, Guardian app is completely free. It's going to give you all the metrics that you are able to see on the back end of your battery. How many charge cycles? What's the temperature of the battery? Do you know? Because if you can see temperature, you're going to know if you can charge it at that point without damaging any cells, and if that charger will actually go into a charging cycle, knowing that it's above 32. You're going to be able to see what is your voltage. If you're running something, it's going to show you what the draw is, and a estimated runtime. On the flip side, when you're charging, you can actually see at what rate it's charging at and how long it needs to charge to get to full. So the days of looking at, the 3 or 4 light up buttons on a trolling motor, and looking at that and saying, oh, I got 2 out of my 4 buttons, I think I'm at 50%. Those days are done.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've used the Guardian app and it's pretty cool. Like, I love the fact that you can divide. It'll ask you, like, okay, you want to see how much time you got left at your current usage rate, and you can say, well, what's the use? If I've used it for like 100% power over the last minute, I can say, okay, tell me how much more running time I have based on the last 5 minutes, which was I use it 100%. It'll tell you, okay, if you use it at that, then you have like an hour, 2 hours before you run dry, or vice versa if you lose it at a lower rate. So that I like that it's not just like a guesstimate. It really breaks it down by the usage rate, and you can set up in the settings, based on, you want to compare what you've used it for the last 20 minutes or last 5 minutes, because a lot of times we'll go to a spot. I'll be like, full power, get to my spot a mile away, and then fish that area for 20 minutes, and without using my trolling motor. So it's gonna be like, well, for the last 20 minutes, I haven't used it, but previous to that, I used it on 100% power. So they have that ability to put it in the settings, give you a real more accurate, usage rate or life on it.
Yeah.
Sorry, my cough, my winter cold is crazy this year. Anything else that we missed, Kyle? And I appreciate it. I know you're a family man. You've been working all day, so I really appreciate you taking the time to come up to the podcast. What else should we know about batteries before we buy a battery? And where can people find out more about Norsk Lithium?
Yeah. So one of the things I would do is what I would like to see is, if you're looking into batteries, check out the websites. Check out Facebook groups, that sort of thing, and feel free. You can either give us a call, or make sure you check out our website, because what we do is we kind of break down everything into the different options. So you'll have the portable sonar, you'll have the marine, you'll have the kayak. We'll have a page dedicated to Guardian, or live imaging, that sort of thing, and blog posts going in deep on specific topics. So make sure you reach out, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. NorskLithium.com. There is a contact us tab. So if you did want to reach out directly, feel free via phone call or email, or hit us up on social media as well. So leave something in the comments, or send us a direct message, and we can assist you.
No problem. Kyle, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go because I know you got somewhere to be. So I really appreciate the time, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on iCast this year later on.
Yep, you got it. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much.
No problem. Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye. All right, everyone. That's it for today's show. It was kind of a little short episode. Me and Kyle were been trying to set up a date to actually do this. Episode is very busy with a lot of things. So we finally managed to get in a short episode. So I really appreciate Kyle coming up. And I wanted to bring this episode not as a infomercial. Yes, I am partnered with Norsk Lithium. And one thing that I love with Norsk Lithium, Mariner Sales, and Douglas Rods, all three of them, those are my three business partners for my podcast and my social media. All three of them, I can talk directly to Kyle. In the case of Douglas Rod, I can pick up my phone and call the actual designer for the rods to ask him question about the rod designs, or what rod works best. And same thing with Mariner Sales. I have a good relationship with Eric, the owner. So I love having these companies on my side, and I'm really proud of being part of Norsk Lithium because of what you just saw in this conversation. Being able to actually call somebody and ask them questions, and have that more of a family ambient relationship other than just a business relationship. And once again, Norsk Lithium to me is one of the best batteries out there on the market. So go check them out, norsklithium.com. If you are interested in getting one of those batteries, you can hit the link on my bio on my social media. It does give me a kickback, but if you use promo code BKB10, you get a 10% discount on your side. So thank you for tuning in. Again, catch us on the podcast streaming platforms every Wednesday with the Advanced Kayak Angler, hosted by Kurt Smith, and every Friday. If you missed the live show on Thursday, you can catch the episode on Friday mornings, the real life with your boy Armando. If you're going to be on the water, wear your PFDs. Have a great day, everyone. Peace out.